All right. So this is my first stream. Hey guys. This is Cthulhian Man. Give me a second. This is my first time doing this. We're gonna do some crafting. Some of you may know me from my Instagram. It's Cthulhian Man. I'm currently working on a fun little project, Bob from Overwatch. Tonight, my plan is to kind of do some finishing work on him. Again, lots of process pics on my Instagram. Got a few goodies in from Amazon today, so I have I need to prime him and do some painting. Some really thrilling things for my first stream. Watching him paint dry. But some of the things I have left to do on him, I got a few fun little things today. I'm going to play around with some tea lights. I've done a lot of LED work in the past, but they usually have really big battery packs in them, and I'm trying to fit it inside this helmet that doesn't have a whole lot of room in it. So I got these, and they're interesting. Supposedly they run for entire 24 hours, and I was able to get them in green. So I'm going to hopefully hook some of these up to light up his eyes. I also already did a bit of a heat forming on a sheet of acrylic. If you're in New York, there's a really cool shop called Canal Plastic Center. You just buy random pieces of plastic like this. So this is going to fit on his eyes here with some lights in the background. I also got some stuff that I painted earlier, some eyelids I got to glue on. I glued them on earlier. They were a little crooked, so I'm going to try it again. I've got that to do. Also really exciting on the agenda to finish this up, I got tiny little hat. It's not the perfect color. Bob's hat is actually more of a gray. I was looking at some tutorials on maybe ways to distress this, so I may actually not do this tonight. Looks like it's getting like a hammer and some some alcohol or something. I've got a lot of time till PAX East, so I figured I might as well, play around with this, see if I can get it right. But it needs to be more of like a gray distressed, and I've got to add some detailing around this to make it look like Bob. Other thing I've got to do for this, the helmet's a little wide. We prefer it to be a little bit more like this to get that kind of omnic shape. So there's kind of two things I'm going to do. One, I'm going to add a little bit more aging over here to kind of, accentuate the cheekbones a bit. Also going to try to attach some elastic here to maybe hold it tight. I did that, I did Wolfram for Anime NYC as well, and that's kind of need to do the same thing for that mask. So I'm going to see if that works. Hopefully that's also going to help, because I'm going to try to have this sit on my head like this, because there's not a whole lot of visibility when it's down like this. You probably also can't hear me very well when it's down like that. So I'm hoping maybe a little bit more of elastic might give me something so that it doesn't go flying off while I'm walking around like this at the con. So I think that's kind of sort of what I have left to do on this, of the billion other things I need to do for Bob. So I'm going to start out and just start doing some painting. So I'm going to switch over. I do have, through the magic of the internet, I do have sort of an arm cam here, so you can hopefully watch along, which is probably a lot more interesting than just staring at my face. So, I have somebody watching me. That's so exciting. I was telling someone, we'll see if this, how this goes, because if anything, this is a big test to see, am I capable of crafting and talking at the same time? And I'm capable of talking and crafting, but we'll see if I can do both. I'll talk a little bit about what I've done so far for this. It's kind of a complicated shape, and you'll see I didn't get the mustache perfectly right. I had this whole process where I was just whittling it down and got the approximate shape, then wrapped it in some foam. I had to do a few last minute pivots where I was hoping to have this stick out more. Basically what I wound up doing is where the seam is, I painted it kind of a two-tone. And so when you're up really close, it's not super great. You can sort of see like the bevel here. It's not perfect, but in photographs, it actually helps. Same thing with the idea of like adding some depth here. You can kind of correct some of your mistakes with some depth. So I'm going to try to like get this line a little bit sharper. Yeah, so I'm working with kind of 3 paints right now, kind of randomly. I really like this iridescent fine silver. The primer that I use is a little unconventional. I am in a New York studio apartment, and there's not a whole lot that I can't really spray paint. I can't really use Plasti Dip. I can't really use like these really great chrome spray paint finishes or airbrushing. I'm looking to move soon. Hopefully that will change. So I actually use graphite powder and floor wax. And so a lot of the painting I do winds up being more dry brushing. So this stuff dry brushes really, really well. So that's how I got this finish on. Also using a leather paint, just because again it tends to go on without brush strokes, and I like that a lot. And this random is pewter that I felt works really well as kind of on black. It creates 2 different shades whether I'm painting on the silver or on the black. Another major caveat: my style of cosplay. I don't do a whole lot of research. I make a lot of mistakes. I kind of make it up as I go along. So, and I'm not the best painter, so anything I say, take with a grain of salt, and we can both be surprised together if it winds up looking well. So, I'm gonna start off just kind of adding some silver to this. The part where I'll probably not talk as much, so. Fun, guys. I will try to look at chat if anybody has any questions or something. I guess that's how this works. A lot of what I've been trying to do with this is kind of just try to get this front main part really kind of even. So I just wanted to give it kind of one more coat before I sealed it, at least right here in the center. A little bit of aging on this before, so I'm trying not to cover that too much of that up so I don't have to redo it. And this is probably not the right way to do this, but I often get impatient and I like to kind of speed through kind of things to kind of see if this is the right approach and then kind of come back and do it a second time. Finishing is not one of my strong suits. Again, I'm really excited to get a new space so I can actually start working with like a little bit more airbrushing. I feel like painting by brush is something that's not good for impatient people. Anyway, just wanted to get like a little bit more right here on the brow just to kind of, at least when like the shine gets on, that there's no sort of an even color. Because a lot of that sort of charcoal mixture I use at the bottom does shine through. What's cool about it is you can actually buff it. So when it does shine through, it still gets the same like reflection, I guess. At least that's the theory. I've used this paint when I have used the charcoal mixture, and I feel like I have to do a billion more coats, and it never looks as thick, if that makes sense. The other thing is I did this and I saw it in photos, and it's a little too harsh, so I'm gonna kind of clean this up a bit. Too much. Apparently, the only kind of painting that really works for me is dry brushing, which basically means I just try to use as little paint as possible and just right. going to be pretty fun here in a bit, well, maybe in another stream. I'm planning on making his arm cannon functional, meaning I want to kind of do some like spring-loaded system so I can squeeze something and have the guns pop out. We'll see if I ultimately wind up doing that, but I have a sort of a harebrained idea. I'm excited to do it. Like I said, I'm impatient. I like to jump the gun on things. But I have to kind of get the rest of the shape done before I can start really worrying about making a function. And his cannons are... I thought the face was going to be the hardest part. It's a giant cylinder with a ton of little pieces, and it's going to be a fun project. I feel like pattern making is something, I talk about what I'm bad at. I feel like pattern making is something that I hated at first, but I'm starting to really kind of enjoy, so I'm looking forward to that challenge. Speaking of, like, this Chen, I was dreading. I'm actually pretty happy with how it turned out. I put away the pattern earlier. Joys of being in a studio apartment. You have to, like, really keep on organizing and putting things away, or things get crazy really fast. I guess one sort of benefit of streaming is I guess I can also look at how it photographs as I'm working on it, although I guess I need to let it so dry. That's my... It's going to take a little bit more to cover this up than I thought it was going to be, but so this I'm working on for PAX East. It'll be my first time going to PAX East. I do go to Boston a lot. I've done a few other Overwatch cosplays. One of my very first cosplays was actually May, which was a mistake. I didn't like the outfit. It was real, and it was like one of those, like, making the outfit was kind of like, I look kind of terrible in this. But I was super excited with how Snowball came out, which kind of steered me toward the path of, I should just make more props and worry less about how I look. So then at Comic-Con I did Hammond, which was super fun. It was just like the spacesuit Hammond. Super easy cosplay. Most of the props was like building out the backpack. But strangely enough, these ears, you can tell that Overwatch reuses a lot of models, because the Bob's ears are almost exactly the same thing as Hammond's tail. So look it up. I'm not joking. So did Hammond, and so this will be my third one in terms of gaming. I also big fan of My Hero Academia. I think if you're following me on Instagram, chances are it's because you see me do Endeavor. And what was really exciting about Endeavor, he's apparently not such a bad father. They did another popularity contest. I think it was their third or fourth one. And he's finally actually one of the top 10 most popular hero. I think he's like number 8. And All Might is now 10. So I'm like, okay. So when people yell at me at cons, you're a terrible father, I feel like, apparently all you got to do to have a redemption is to get a cool bro sidekick with its scar. Apologies if that's a spoiler for anyone, but I read the manga. Alright, so I think this is... Yeah, so that shadow is now a little bit more natural. And I'm going to add a little bit of this pewter. It's a sort of 2 places. It's interesting because it's 2 different colors, but I'm going to apply it 2 different places. I'm going to apply it along here just to try to make this line a little bit more precise. I'm going to use some index cards for that, and I'm going to kind of dry brush it in around here to try to create more of that omnic curve. And kind of what I mean by that is I think Zenyatta has that really kind of tight face. I mean, I have a really fat face, And so I think I modeled this on my face, which is why he wound up having a fat head. So it's this sort of shadow here. I want to kind of emphasize that just a little bit more. Yeah, I think I bought like every form of shiny black material imaginable, and this pewter I actually really like. It's just like a Blick generic brand. Alright. Use this brush first. I do not take good enough care of my brushes. I wound up ultimately buying like one nice brush, and I try to take better care of this one by like better care. My lights just... I'm having some issues with my Google Home. I've been trying to get my lights on bright for a while, and apparently it just took it an hour to finally happen. Hey, we can see better now. Let's see here. Be really careful because this is not too far off from what I want. This step that I'm doing right now is something I always regret. I always like, okay, it's good enough, and then I like seal it, and then like the week before the con, I'm looking at it and I see like one spot, or like I could have just did this if I just took a little bit more time. So that's kind of what tonight is for. My first stream, kind of taking it easy, pretty chill, and doing some things that normally I'd be too impatient to do. So I'm going to pull up the reference here. It's always important to have some good reference shots on hand. Yeah, he's not quite as cheekbony as Zenyatta. So the one thing I didn't quite get right with the model is you can see sort of his profile kind of runs flat here. If you look at the model, it curves a little bit. There's like a little bit more of a curve. So that's some of what I'm trying to cheat with this. I mean, in the cosplay, the advice I was always told was it just gets so good in the photo. So sometimes like little things like this can go a long way. Again, like, if you look at my Instagram, I've got some photos of this where it's, like, just the primer on, and does not look nearly as good as it does with just, like, a little bit of aging. Even this, like, I kind of rushed some of this, kind of regretting not smoothing this down more, but it looks a lot better with a little bit of, you know, grit and stuff around it, because, you know, he is kind of machined. But sometimes, like, when you're trying to be more bringing it into the world, trying to be too perfect actually has the opposite result. It just reveals the imperfections. So sometimes letting things just be a little bit more dirty and just making sure that, you know, you allow things to look a little battle-worn, some imperfections. It's not the worst thing in the world. Because things in real life are not, you know, 3D models. They're not like super perfect. It's sort of the imperfections that make things look more realistic. Also on that note, like a good philosophy. So I'm kind of newer to cosplay. I kind of did my first cosplay like 2 years ago, and really got into prop making probably like 6 months ago. But I am a creative professional. I've been a visual designer for about 15 years now. I went to school doing mostly sculpture, so a lot of this has been kind of jumping in and learning but jumping back into some old skills, and soul sucking as a successful creative career can be, it's nice to kind of jump in there and have something that's just as silly as dressing up as a cartoon character, and you know, being able to just be creative and have fun again with it. But the reason why I bring this up is, like, speaking of imperfections, there's a really good philosophy. I forget where it was, some YouTube thing I think that I saw like years ago, and it's really important. Like, the way you get good at anything is not by perfecting; it's by finishing. And I've gotten, like, some people like, oh, you're making so many cosplays and you're so fast. I'm like, it's because my goal is to finish things. I might say, like, this Bob is probably the first one I've done in a while that I'm really trying to, like, you know, be a little bit extra with. Because at the end of the day, like, if you're new at something and if you're learning something, you're not going to get it to be perfect. You can try, but you're only going to get a better version of, you know, your first version. Instead of that, you should just keep creating things. You should finish things and let things go. Let things not be perfect. Like, I don't rebuild the entire mask because you don't get this perfect line. Because the idea is then you finish things and then you learn from it and you move on to something else and then you finish that and eventually you've finished a whole lot of things. And next thing you know, the things you start doing start getting a lot better and your definition of perfect starts, you know, gets radically different. So, and again, I've been sort of amazed. I think my Endeavor costume, I had a few, like, breakdowns because you might see me do some sewing on the stream. I don't know how well that will actually work, but pretty early on, I was like, I need to learn how to sew if I'm not going to make a costume. Before I really realized how much you could make out of foam. I really struggled with sewing my Endeavor outfit because it's got all these panels and sort of fine lines, and I didn't pick the right material. I knew I needed to, like, do trim with, like, by cutting, but with a bias, but I didn't know there was a bias binding, which is different from, you know, just cutting fabric along the bias. And I think I spent a good couple weeks. I completely redid it at one point in time, just struggling and fighting with trying to get this patterning down. And I eventually kind of gave up on it, and I think later I had, like, this kind of, like, moment of, like, eureka, where I bought, like, this thin ribbon because his actual model has, like, these really thin navy lines. Like, I thought I was going to make it simple by having just one thick line instead of three. I ended up going with the three by sewing this ribbon over it, and it covered up a lot of the imperfections, but it was a struggle. And I kind of wish but anyway, so I still was not super happy with it. I think there was, like, one photo I took from this side, and I'm like, man, I look like a villain and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. But, you know, you go to the con, and, you know, it was, like, a good zeitgeist moment, and it's getting pictures taken, like, every 3 seconds. It also helped that I had a Hawks with me. And, like, whether or not people saw the imperfection, I'm pretty sure they didn't. But if they did, they didn't care. It was still an incredible cosplay, and I had a ton of fun. And then I saw some photos come out, and it photographed incredibly well. It was so awesome, and I wasn't happy when the outfit started falling apart. A few lessons learned there. But it was I was super happy to sort of see the photographs and to photograph well, and I didn't look terrible in it. I mean, I may have a dad bod, but I don't have an Endeavor dad bod. So, anyway, little tricks you can do. So again, I'm just trying to get a little bit of depth in here. I mean, Bob Ross moment, some happy little cheeks. So, as I said earlier, this is probably not the most exciting thing for me to start my stream with. but so too, I think I have like one viewer right now. To my one viewer, which might be me. I apologize. So we've got a few other cosplay plans coming up, so some stuff, maybe if you're watching this at a later time, that you might see me work on. I kind of want to, I've done like Pro Hero Endeavor twice now, so I kind of want to branch out a little bit. There's like, so I'm going to do it for Katsucon, which is February 15th in DC. And that's, if you're not familiar with it, it's a, it's like an otaku con, Japanese content, anime, manga. It'll be my first time. But apparently they have like a formal event at some point in time. I forget what it's called, but no jeans, that sort of a thing. That'll be a good time to do a casual endeavor. He's got this really cool suited look, which means I basically, it's going to be an easy cosplay. I basically just put on my suit, make sure I still fit in my suit. I don't wear a suit very often. Like I said, I work in a creative field. So basically put on my suit, I need to buy or make a flaming tie. And that's kind of mostly the outfit. So I'm going to do that. And then I had this idea, just because I am a sucker for some puns. I'm going to do a fireman endeavor, just because I want to make the pun, he fights fire with fire. So I was just looking at a few shots of, you know, firemen, sexy firemen, and a lot of them, they have like stripes. They're much simpler stripes, but they kind of have the same patterning that Endeavor does. So they just get like a navy set of, I found what these are called B.O.B overalls. So they're the overalls that kind of come up a little higher and strap, which I'll look better in. With a jacket with kind of the safety stripes. So I'm going to get a set of those and just sew on, again, that like lining, paneling stuff. I'm going to sew some of that on. And I'm going to, the other thing is I want to do is, I want to make a fire axe, like kind of something that's a little over the top. For Halloween I made, I called it a lot of things in the career, but I ultimately, my favorite thing that somebody said, and I ran with it, I went as a Skyrim mod, as basically a rainbow Viking, and I made this light up sword that turned out really well. I'm going to do something similar, but I'm going to do like a light up fire axe, and I need to, it's something I was considering starting tonight. There's a really cool process that I'd love to show you guys. Where you start with like a PVC pipe. I put too much on here. You start with a PVC pipe and create kind of like a set of vice grips. And how I do it in my not formal crafting studio is actually kind of hilarious. I get like a side shelf and I set it up. And you basically compress the PVC pipe. So you don't have to actually, you can have one like a round handle and a flat blade and a smooth transition and a single piece of PVC pipe without having to glue or without having to like, you know, worry about it breaking. And it also gives, by using that sort of method, it's really easy to run a cable through it. So I'm looking forward to kind of showing my version of that. In fact, that might be a bit of a theme with my my stream, is that I do kind of make my versions of things. I experiment a lot. Saw a tutorial on how to do this, and I kind of made it my own way. Again, probably not the best ways, but these are kind of just at a more like novice level. Sometimes it's a little bit easier. I feel like a lot of the tutorials I get are very much like, hey, I got a formal crafting studio, and I'm a maker, and I live out in the Midwest, and I have an entire basement to myself, and I can do whatever I want. And they're really cool, and I'm really jealous, and one of these days I'll escape New York, and I'll be able to do that too. But this is more fun little hacks of how to kind of, how to survive. So, much. Let's try this. Okay. Mirror. I like weird cosplay here. Yeah. This guy looks like he's got a little bit of a, he needs to shave a little bit there. Kind of want to blend it just a little bit more. And then I'll hopefully move on to something a little bit more interesting. Like varnishing! Knew this is gonna happen, I know. Start putting some on my head, my hair starts going crazy. There was a moment when I was like, I should probably put on like a fun shirt. I should I'm inviting people into my apartment. I should, be presentable. I'm like, oh fuck that, this is how I craft. I have no idea if my music's playing. I don't even know what's playing. I've been listening to a mix of I've been watching a lot of anime lately. Surprise. And so I usually just ask for something to play on my TV. It plays through it. I've been listening to a lot of I guess K-pop from 2014 or something. Don't judge me. I'm really bad with music. I never know what to listen to. It's like one step above working in silence, which honestly probably, if I was here on my own, it's probably what I'd be doing, but, Cheers. Oh. Switch my damn camera. You guys are staring at me. Get the reference again. So my cosplay partner, Bag and Gats on Instagram, he's the guy who did Hawks. He's much better at painting than me. Definitely recommend looking at some of his stuff. He's really good at aging. He's also one of those people who's described the difference between the two of us is I think I rubbed this too much. I'm not going to try. This is exactly what I was talking about being bad. I think I rubbed this so much that I think yeah. I hope I'm going to be able to. So the primer I use doesn't... This happens from time to time, and I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know whether it's my primer being rubbed off, because I feel like I do a lot of dry brushing. I think that's what this is. So I'm going to just kind of do a quick reset on this. I might even wind up putting some more primer on it and just repainting this, and I'm going to make sure that it's smooth before I do that. So I'm going to put back a little bit of silver. Thought I'd put plenty of layers of that wax. People don't usually recommend using floor wax. This is probably why. Usually just because but it's usually because you can see sometimes like it can bend a little. This might also be another reason. Usually it soaks in pretty well. But I'm just going to try to get this to be a little more even. We've got a little bit of work to do to kind of cover up this imperfection. I guarantee it was just because I rubbed it too much. You know what, you go watch a professional stream. Just be like, look, it's perfect. You're going to be watching me fix a lot of stupid mistakes. Just got to remember, another key to painting is painting everything in an even direction. I'm going to grab a little bit of primer back on top of this. I don't know if this is really what I should do, but I'm going to try it. Let's see what happens. Should I sand it down and redo it? Nah. Let's just put on another layer and pray. So if like his bagging cuts are here, he'd be Googling and watching YouTube videos and telling me exactly what I want to do, but he is, he's traveling right now. So, on my own. So I'm using this paintbrush now. So I guess I'm mixing. Because I wasn't paying attention and just grabbed the brush, but this was, oh, this is the darker one. I don't use this. But I'm gonna like keep painting over it anyway. Let's bonsai, let's see what happens. Science. The cool stuff that I do like about floor wax, like when you can't spray paint, your options are pretty much like this or like Mod Podge. Mod Podge, you have to really sand down. This stuff, like, it dries so flat. It's so wonderful. It'll wrinkle up a little bit, but so this method of priming with like graphite powder and stuff, this wasn't something that I was actually I learned from like a official cosplay source. It was something that I was taught in college for ceramics, and I was like, what the hell, let's try it. And the first time I did it, I was happy enough with the results that I just kind of kept doing it. And I don't know, there's probably better ways, but you know, I feel like the fun part about crafting and design or art or whatever you might call this, it's kind of, you know, making it your own. let's see if oof, I'm really going to be... I mean, worst case, I can always just sand this down and kind of start over, but I'm going to give this the good shot to see what happens with this. Just trying to make sure that there's enough for the paint to stick to here, so I can just kind of do a few fresh coats, and we can pretend that I knew what I was doing all along. Yeah, they usually say when you make a mistake, it's like, oh, it's a battle scar. This is a weird ass scar, though. By the way, happy Thanksgiving. Okay. Brown sugar. It's really weird. I'd say it's a sweet beer. It's not really that sweet, which I'm not necessarily a bad thing. I feel like a sour beer. I'm also drinking that, which I would prefer a little bit, but sour beers is kind of need something to go in between them. All right, let's see if I can fix this. Okay. Some hope. I feel like I'm just gonna kind of try to return this straight to silver. I'm probably gonna need a couple coats, and there might be a little bit of a bump, but it's at least the awful line's starting to disappear. I'm doing one more coat. On the bright side, it's where I'm adding the shading anyway. So hopefully, as long as I don't rub it too hard, I'll be able to kind of cover that up. So once I get this done, then the last bit of painting I need to do is I'm just going to kind of go in and really clean up these lines and give it a piece of varnish, and then I'll probably move on to something more interesting. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to be able to do. Well, maybe I'll, if you're just tuning in, exciting purchase is my fun little tiny hat. Maybe I'll work on a little bit of foam work. What is going on with my lights right now? Hey Google. Hey Google, activate bright lights. Modern technology. I have to use my... Moonlighting. There we go. I was having troubles with my lights earlier, and I kept yelling at it to do things, and I have a feeling there are just some like backed up commands. Just like 1 hour later, it finally triggers. Sadly, I lost some of my initial, because I went in enough different directions with this. I've kind of lost some of. So when you're painting with trying to get a chrome effect, you're never going to get like that mirrored chrome effect. You're just never going to get it. The second best thing you can do is to get a brushed steel effect, and you really get that by just being really consistent with your brush strokes. And again, it's not perfect, but it's a noticeable difference between kind of having that brushed steel or brushed aluminum look versus just kind of, you know, something that just looks like a scratched up aluminum. Okay, so I'm going to reapply some of this, and so, yay! I sort of fixed it. I'm going to. Probably still have a little bit of floor wax on this brush, but yeah, I should switch. Don't want to chance it. I already had like one kind of mistake. We'll clean that here in a bit. Painting was one of those things I wish I would have spent a little bit more time doing in like art school. I just was always so incredibly bad at it. I used to want to do like 3D animation. That was kind of originally what I wanted to do, and I remember going to like a professor being like, "I want to do 3D animation, and will you please let me in your class and let me skip taking a drawing class?" And it's like, nope. And so I suffered through my first drawing class, and I was doing terrible. I think I got like my first drawing class. I think I passed it only because I think my teacher felt sorry for me, because that was like my summer in college that I got mono. I think she just really felt sorry for me, I guess. There were just some items in my portfolio that were clearly done in like the delirium of sickness, I guess. But so I survived my first drawing class, and then I took like the sculpture class, and I was doing pretty well in it, and I was having a lot of fun. And this was like the first time, I think, my first art class I ever took that I actually was doing well in. And I was talking to the instructor about it, because I'm like sophomore in college, and being like I don't get it. Like, you're saying I'm actually capable of at this stuff, and I've sort of struggled at other times. And she was like, oh, you're just more of a. Maybe you're more of a three-dimensional thinker. You should think about things in 3 dimensions and not try not to mimic, just accept the fact that you're not good at this sort of thing. But when you do need to do it, think of it more 3-dimensionally, and maybe you'll have better luck. And And that's when I sort of found like charcoal worked out a lot better for me, because you can sort of think about it again in 3 dimensions. You're pushing and pulling, and so like even right now when I'm working on this, it's more lights just changed again. Like I'm not thinking, oh, how am I painting this gradient, but more like, am I pushing this further back? So if you're really bad at painting or drawing like me, maybe that's a thing. I'm gonna fix my lights again. And that really helped me out a lot, because it's sort of there's been a lot of like research and thought around how the psychology of creativity just really messes people up. Like we're sort of taught at an early age that, you know, there's some people who are creative and some people who just aren't. And it's not really true. There's actually a really cool exercise, because like the truth of the matter is like creativity is more about being able to observe things and being smart about how you observe things, and not necessarily having like some sort of specific talent. Like sometimes people just develop that ability to observe the world in a real way earlier on, and then they wind up being praised as you have creative talent, and then they just continue with it, and they get encouraged and nurtured with it, and then they grow up to be successful creatives or artists. And there's other people who just don't show that early. They don't get encouraged and told like, hey, guess what? You are not creative. You should probably stop doing this and go into something else. But there's like a really cool exercise that, you know, that sort of proves this wrong. Like you sort of think like, okay, get a bunch of people in a room together and just ask them to draw a sunset. Just like draw a sunset. Designers, creatives, brilliant people, and just, you know, mathematicians and scientists. I don't know, just like a whole diverse sort of set. And after you ask them to draw the sunset, you can go around the room and just sort of ask, like, hey, how many people drew a beach scene? How many of them had like a horizon line? How many drew a bird in the sky? Did your sun have like rays sticking out of it? Was there a palm tree? And you're going to find that everybody in the room will probably have drawn one of the things that somebody else had drawn. Whether they were a designer, whether they were creative, or whether they're an ordinary person. Like, because at the end of the day, like, we all sort of come up with the same natural things when we just draw off the top of our mind. But when you observe something, when you look at something, you really think about it, and you sort of train your brain to sort of move beyond those impulses. By, for example, asking, draw the last sunset you actually experienced. So, like, for me, that'd be like, oh, I was riding home on the train, and I was looking over the Brooklyn Bridge, and I saw the sun setting. I'm like, oh, perfect timing to be crossing the Brooklyn Bridge. And, you know, that's a very different experience than just, like, the beach scene. Like, the sort of the trope you have in your mind. And so that just sort of proves it, like, you know, if you just, you know, get out of your head and you sort of stop trying too hard, and you just, you know, you just observe something and you sort of just try to replicate it or translate it, you know, you can get over that hump of, like, am I a creative or not? Because trust me, I grew up, I was discouraged from drawing. I was told I would never be creative my entire life, and I got an art degree, and I've had a 15-year career in design. And what's interesting about cosplay, I was thinking about this earlier, is that it's a lot of observation. Like, it's sort of area where you're trying to replicate something. You're taking something that can't usually be translated into the real world. You're taking like a cartoon character and you're trying to translate it to fit to you, and you're sort of there's lots of observations that you have to take into account. There's observations on yourself, understanding, like, you know, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what will I look good in, how do I adapt this character to me. There's there's the creative twists that you put onto it. There's sort of your version of it. There's so much creativity that gets layered upon, you know, that eye of how you translate something into this world, and it's, you know, all of that is completely separate from the craft. And so it's always important to sort of separate those two. And, you know, maybe you're stronger at one than the other. And, you know, I sort of feel like I've always leaned on sort of, you know, my non-craft based creativity, and hopefully eventually I'm going to get to the point where I start making beards that aren't messed up. So speaking of which, I'm going to now move to my next stage. This is a cool trick. There are certain like supplies you should just always have around, just like within arm's reach. Things like wax paper, craft paper, this stuff. Like I have a full like roll of this stuff. Actually, I'm gonna grab this. If you don't have this, buy this. This is probably the first thing I ever bought. I still have a ton of it left. This is like brilliant. It's cheap and it will last you forever. You can use it for pattern making, and you can use it to protect surfaces. You can use it as like liner and backing. I love my craft paper. But index cards, cardstock is like another really big one. Just for sketching or for supporting or for like prototyping, or also just for masking. Because I know you should really probably truly mask things, but every time I feel like I mask something, I pull off paint. Maybe because I'm using varnish or floor wax as a primer and it's not very strong. Maybe that's probably the real reason, but sometimes just having a quick thing like this nearby to use as a sharp edge is really handy. It's also good for like scooping up spills and I don't know. So actually a little bit more of this paint. So again, this is the same paint here as here. It's when you're dry brushing it, you put it on a light color, it's going to be lighter. When you put it on a darker color, it's going to be darker. So, and basically, it's kind of I have like really three different colors of gray, and I'm kind of actually getting 4 colors out of it. And I have to do a cleanup on the black as well. So I mentioned this earlier. The real reason for me doing this is because I kind of messed up the beard a little bit, and this is just kind of trying to make it a little bit more true in photographs. So you can see how the actual foam is here, but I put a wrapper around it and it goes a little bit lower. So there's kind of 2 edges here, but because I'm painting it in 2 tones, it's going to photograph correctly. So sometimes you just need to get the foam good enough, and you can do some magic afterwards. A little bit of paint. Let's see how that goes. It's a little bit. This was noticing earlier because when I painted this originally, I wasn't doing this, and I was just kind of really hesitant around these edges because I was trying to be so careful that I don't think the paint went on as thick. I'm just kind of doing another round to kind of just make sure that it's a little bit more even all across. It could just be the shadows that I'm seeing, but this is kind of more of a sanity check for me. Not perfect, but I'll clean it up on the other side. Just read the comment, it looks great so fat. I'm like, no, he said it should be skinnier, that's why I'm doing that. Actually, finally started playing Ash and Bob today, or actually yesterday, I think. I'm usually not really good at characters who need to aim. It's blame on getting older. Actually, fun fact, it's actually true that you do age out of gaming in the same way that you age out of sports. Your reaction time, your actions per minute, actually starts to degrade around the age of 28. So there's actually a lot of truth in that you know, be too old to game, even though I've been gaming my entire life. What I love about Overwatch is you can usually find plenty of characters that you don't have to aim with. I probably have like 60 hours on Hammond. I'm not even joking. I love the character so much. And once you play him, he's hard to play other characters just because he goes so fast. Like, you switch to a different hero, I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I not back on the point? I'm like, come on, Grandma. Get back to point. But I started playing Ash a little bit more, and it wasn't terrible. I think I might have killed a person or two. It was actually pretty good. I think I played her in like a no limits, which was actually pretty fun. It was hard enough to get killed. That was like kind of good aiming practice. Got like one play of the game with her, always because of Bob. Let's be real, Bob's really the real hero. Hero 29 and a half. Tell you what, they announced this character, and you know, a cosplay partner who was about half my size and a lot more fit just sent it to me. It's like, we're doing this, and I think he's like, I want to make the mask. I'm like, no, you're not. Because he was looking at Ash, and Ash is a lot of sewing, and when we started getting more serious about cosplay, I was like, okay, I'll learn how to sew, you can learn how to 3D print, and, you know, hate sewing. I'm capable of sewing now. I'm not a really huge fan of it, and so I'm really glad, because I actually have had a lot of fun making this mask. It's probably the most complex shape I've built. And this is one of those characters that, I mean, cosplaying is tough when you have a beard and when you're a big guy, because you sort of need to find characters that, you know, there's not a lot of anime characters who have beards, for one, or video game characters always have beards, and when they do, they're usually like really huge ones, or, you know, but to have like, so characters that have like, it does have a beard, it covers mine, but I don't have to shave this. To find like a good hero that's like fun and loved and looks like it's going to be really fun to wear, it's just really awesome. So I do want to put like a lot of love and care into this, because I feel like this is the problem. Like one of my first cosplays was May from Overwatch, being like, oh, just do a gender bend, it'll be fun, and I won't even wear a wig because I want to be respectful. I'm just going to be like Ginger May or something. I just looked terrible. I looked silly. I looked like just a weird dude in pajamas. Yeah, pack was okay, but at the end of the day, it was like, it wasn't my character. It wasn't like I was just kind of replicating the outfit. Kind of goes on to what I was like talking about earlier. I was replicating the outfit, but I wasn't really channeling the character. So that's why I'm kind of excited about this one. And it's like, I think there was like one guy who did it at Anime NYC, and props to him, to like turn around Bob in like a week is pretty crazy. But I kind of like the sort of like Orisa. You don't see a whole lot of Orisa cosplays, so I'm kind of excited to put some care into this. And again, there's a lot of work. I think next step is going to be just the arm cannon. I'm not going to make the hands movable. I think I'm going to be carrying the hands, and I want to have like a mechanism in one of the hands I can just kind of squeeze and make the guns pop out. It's kind of my plan. See if that happens. I've been debating on whether I want to like try to vent this or not, because it's, I mean, I'm not going to have the head on mostly because I'm going to wear it. I'm going to make it flip up. but I'm gonna get somebody advised my friend Uncle Brenner on Instagram. He does a really good Aizawa, and he's another one of those guys who sort of always has a lot of knowledge to share. I think this guy's like an engineer or a mechanic or some sort of combination between the two. I know he does a lot of power tools, and he was just immediately was like, "It's a defogger. Go to a dive shop." So I got to figure that out. Because again, if you can see it earlier, I've got this little piece that I'm going to be adding. It fogs up really fast. Kind of envious of people who have like just like rock star bodies who can put on like just like a wig and be like, "I'm done." Because I sort of feel like my dad bod, I'm like, I want to cover every inch of my body, and then I step onto the con floor and I'm like, what have I done? It's always just a lot to put on and a lot to carry around, but I'm not sure if I'm going to wind up ever wearing my Endeavor outfit again. Gasp. Most because the official art came out today, another set, and there's always been this debate on whether his gauntlets were silver or gold, because there were two pieces of artwork, and one was like silver and one was gold, and you know, it could have been, I was like, oh, it's just the reflection of the flames, and they had like another artwork, which still could be the reflection of the flames, but it was like, he was very rose gold, and so like a lot of the colors were different. I don't know if I want to redo it. Also, both times I've wore the outfit, it sort of fell apart right at the end of the day. And there's a lot I want to change about, so maybe one day I'll wind up remaking it, but I think my future endeavors are going to be more like variants of him. Alright. I think this line is, yeah, that's a lot cleaner. So I'm just going to do a little bit more. I'm going to do clean up the black. I'm going to use this. I don't know if you guys have ever tried using leather paint. I love this stuff. It's one of those paints that just it seems when you have good primer and you're, especially with the black colors, the lighter colors don't work as well. But like the dark colors, they just go on so smoothly. You don't have to do a lot of layers. You don't really get a lot of brush strokes. It's moderately flexible. So when I have an opportunity to use like leather paint, I tend to jump to the occasion. It also works pretty well on the leather. I found out I was once kind of had like an emergency, had to dive in and change like a navy to a black, and this just like blended in immediately. This guy got soaked in. It was like small miracle. Which had more to say about leather paint as to why it's different. Like, is it meant for leather? Like, why is it called leather paint? What makes it different? I don't know. But it's one of those things where try it out. It works a certain way, and I like it. Just keep using it. This is good because I missed some spots clearly. Setting up for the stream, I like rearranged my crafting setup a little bit, and I actually think this lighting angle is it's a little harsh, I think, in the stream, but it's actually letting me see some of these spots, because this, I used a red Eva foam on this, and so a lot of that's just kind of like peeking through in a couple spots. It's giving me a chance to kind of clean that up. So I've got a couple people watching right now, which is cool. But what I didn't realize what streaming was going to be like. I'm like sitting here talking to myself. um, it's actually kind of funny. I usually I do a lot of crafting nights with Bag and Cats usually at the other end of the table, and um, it just reminds me a lot of like art school because you're usually like in a studio. If you ever watch like any like reality TV shows where it's like Project Runway or whatever, and people are just or Drag Race. I'm a big Drag Race fan. For the holiday special coming up, but they're just sitting around making stuff and just talking with each other. Kind of love that. So I'm really lucky to actually have someone who also enjoys doing this. Again, he's like, he knows way more than I do. He actually watches tutorial videos. Doesn't just make stuff up. The other thing too about like people who from the outside looking in, cosplay is very different. But I think one thing that like really just struck me about it's like the process or the community is just kind of the social media aspect of it. Like I'm at the top end of millennial, and so I'm like of the generation that kind of got ruined by social media. So I'm like I'm not on Facebook anymore. I kind of like maybe just went to Instagram, even though I know it's owned by Facebook. But then I like ultimately made the cosplay account. I like barely touch my personal one anymore. But the idea of like crafting for social just really opened up my mind because you have a different motivation. You're not trying to get a sense of social approval. You're trying to get a sense of creative approval, or it sort of taps into that same sort of idea of just sitting in a craft room with a bunch of other creatives and talking about process or asking about what you're working on or passing ideas around. And that's like that's a little bit of the motivation for me starting to stream is sort of the conversation, the dialogue, the discourse around what you're doing. I think is as important as doing it, and meeting other people, helping other people out. Like, I'll tell you what, like the number of people I met on the internet just because I used a really strange material for my flames. Just kicking off a conversation about, hey, what material did you use? How do you work with it? Where do you get it? Warning, like, this is how you glue it. Be careful about this. And next thing you know, you like keep in contact with that person. And like I've got like this really good cosplayer in Vancouver. He does a really good Tempest and a really good Punisher. I just met him because I used an unusual material for my flames. So just a few other people like that too. And just to answer the question, if you saw my endeavor, pitched them like already twice. I'm not sponsored by them by any means. Canal Plastic Center is like one of the coolest places in the city. There's also Canal Rubber, which I've actually not been to, but right beside it. But it's just a really good place to get random pieces of plastic. And they have these decorative films that come in kind of like weird, like I got flame patterns, like an orange and a red and a yellow, which I wound up not using, and it refracts light in a weird way, and it's really fun to use. But the one caution point is that if you glue it or tape it or do anything to it, it removes the transparency. You can see through it, and you don't expect that. And I was like, oh, fuck. And to like really pivot, and it's sort of limited. So you have to always kind of design around it so that you're kind of covering up where it's gluing. But I found E6000 is really good. You put like the tiniest little bit like along the edge or something, and it will still glue up. Let me try to get just a little bit more, and I think I'll be ready to start priming. It's actually kind of nice, like, talking while you do this stuff, because I think it slows me down. I think I need this. It slows me down in a good way. Like, I think I'm spending a lot more time on this if I wasn't streaming. Once you seal it, you're kind of done, so it's kind of worth whittling away. I'm trying to figure out, maybe I'll take a break from the stream when I actually seal it, because most of the things I want to do tonight are on this mask, and if I'm waiting for the primer to dry, or maybe I can work on other stuff before and prime it last. Just don't want to prime it when I have my acrylic pieces glued on, because you know I'm gonna like drip on it or something. That's right. Originally, I bought individual pieces of plastic for each eye, and when I was gluing it on, I got just smudgy 6000 on one of them, and there was no getting it off. And I had bought randomly this piece on its own. I was debating how to cut it, and I just stopped and was like, "Wait a minute! I bet I could heat this up." And so I just heat gunned it with some gloves very carefully, and I was able to get it to be the right size. It's just a little, not quite tall enough to perfectly cover it. And then I realized, like, oh, it's got some eyelids. Which these eyelids, it's amazing. And let this dry for a second. I'll just show you. These eyelids add so much to his personality, because he's like a lifeless robot, and then you just bring like a little of this into play, and then he's just throwing so much shade. He's just like, what you doing? What's up, Ash? You know I'm the real hero. So here's some side eye for you, an angry side eye. So I'm still trying to decide exactly where I'm gonna put it. I probably just, I did before and it was a little crooked and I pulled them off, but I'm going to just a little bit, just give them a little bit of that sort of butler thing. So this is gonna get added in. I'm gonna glue this down. I'm gonna add this panel. I'm gonna take one of my messed up squares, and that doesn't matter because I don't have to see through those. I'm gonna unravel this, and I'm gonna hook up these lights in there. Put on an elastic band, and got this fun little thing. Who also came in today, so I can like fit in the gaps and happy pop. That's the plan. Just wanted to mess up my hair one more time. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna prime it. And I think on my next stream, I might take a break here in a second. Actually, I'll probably take a break. You guys don't, priming's nothing too interesting. Might take a break a bit, let it prime. I might turn this on again later, maybe late tomorrow. Got some, getting up to Flushing for some hot pot with friends. It's good to do with Friendsgiving. But I think my next project, I'm either gonna be working on getting at least the framework for his gauntlets, or my other two things I could potentially work on is the Fireman for Endeavor, his axe. I kind of talked earlier, excited to kind of start building that. I have this cool PVC pipe method I want to share. I'm also going to, I'm talking about doing a Konosuba Gender Bend. I'm going to do Darkness. So it's going to be the first time doing some physical armoring. It's going to be a good kind of, because her armor is pretty basic. It's going to be a good test for me before I actually do Bob's, which is going to be very similar, but Bob's it's a little bit more intricate. So I actually have a plaster torso cast that I made a while ago that I might use to help out with that. So for those of you who joined, thank you for joining me on my very first stream. This was a a lot less unnerving than I thought. It's actually kind of chill. So hopefully I'll do more of these, and looking forward to being able to show you guys Bob. So see y'all later.